Welcome to this video on using the new forms function to populate data into Microsoft lists. So if, like me, you maybe use forms to collect feedback on training courses, or you might collect information from other users and want to populate that into some sort of database, and then maybe you want to filter, you want to have different views, you want to notify, and you want to maybe use integrations such as Power BI to really visualize that data, then this new bit of functionality might work best for you. I'll caveat that there are some limitations to it, so it doesn't work exactly how Microsoft Forms works when you populate data into Excel. You're missing things like branching, you're missing things like the ability to share the forms link with people outside of your organization, and branding pieces as well, just to share a few quick things that are missing. But this is great functionality that I'm sure is going to be built on. So this is going to be one to watch. And let me show you how to do it and how you get this set up so you can see if it's got any benefit to you or not. So you can do this on a list that's currently there, or you can do it on a brand new one. Let's create a fresh brand new one just so you can see that end-to-end process. I'm on Microsoft List and I'm just going to click New List at the top. And when I click New List, I'm just going to get the standard pop-up screen, which is going to ask me for what type of list I'm going to create. And I'm going to do a blank one. Keep it nice and simple. And I'm just going to pop in a name for my list. So I want a training feedback form. I can choose my colour. I can choose an icon. And then as standard, I can drop it into my list or a site that I have access to. I'm just going to leave it in my list for this example and click on create. And that's going to create a nice blank list for me to start working with. So you'll notice at the top underneath the search bar, you've already got the forms icon there, and that's what we're going to use. Now I could go in there right now and start building it out, but what I am going to do is build out the columns first. It's up to you which way you want to do it. And even though you've built out some columns, you can still add more into forms, and I'll show you how to do that. But first off, let's just add some columns of data in here. So you can see I've got a title column already there. And when I click on that drop down arrow, I'm going to get my sorting functions, but also my column settings, and I want rename because I need to have a different name for this. So let's say name and click save. So that's changed. I've now collected that person's name. And then I'm going to add another column, and you can see there I have lots of different options there. I am going to do a choice and click next. Pop in a question there. And then my choice, I'm going to get rid of one of them and just click on them to say yes or no. And you can see you can click using the cross or the rubbish bin depending on what view you're looking at. And then the little paint palette there will allow you to change the colour. Basically, it's going to be a pick list. They'll be able to pick yes or no from the list. So nice and easy to work with. And then click save. Finally, I'm going to add another column and put some text in there. And just leave that as a text piece. And click save. So I have a number of columns there where I'm capturing a little bit of data. It's a nice, simple form that I want to create and then fill in with my list. So I've got my columns in my list. I'm now going to go to the forms function to have a look at that. So I'm going to click where it says forms, and I've now got the option to select a new form. So really useful. You can actually add multiple forms to one list. So you can send different links out to people. And that's quite useful, which you'll see in a moment, because I can deselect certain columns that I do not want on my form. So I can have columns on my list, but they don't have to show up on my form. So they won't be populated when they're sent out. So if you have different questions for different people, and this might get around the branching a little bit until that functionality has been added. But if you have different fields that maybe you want to ask some people because they've done a certain type of training and you don't want to ask others, then you can use multiple forms within the same list, and you can send different options. So let's just call this the training feedback form, and you can see that I have username, I have the option, and then I have further feedback. Now, if I click on any of these, it'll look and feel a little bit like Microsoft Forms, but you do see there are some functions that are missing. We do have required options as well. You can see those. And you can see there where that cross has now turned into a bin to get rid of. So just, I mentioned that earlier, just be aware. Sometimes it's a cross, sometimes it's a bin. And then sometimes you'll have different options on the dots, like settings, moving up and down, and things like that. So you can go around and play with those. But what you can also do here is add new fields. So just like you were building a form itself in Microsoft Forms, you can add other questions and things to that. So let's choose a date and time. So you can choose if you want time. Again, you can add required. Just click away and that will be added in. I can actually click and drag that one and move it up if I want to. So you can see I can reorder these questions as well. And when we come out of this, we'll go back onto the list and see what changes is made to the list, because that question wasn't on there previously. And like I said before, you can define what questions you want on your form. So I can actually take off one of these questions, and it doesn't matter, it's still there, but it's not going to be on my form. If I pop it on there, all of them will be asked when I send out this form, and all of that data will be fed back into the list. So this is where you could create different forms for different groups of people and just turn off certain cells, certain columns that you're not interested in getting answers about. And on the right hand side, you can play around with all of that. And obviously, you can add as many different questions in as you want to build out the information that you want to see on your list. If I have a look at the theme options, they're very limited. Again, I imagine this is something Microsoft are going to work on in order to enable us to be closer to our brand and things like that. But for the moment, you have a few options. You do have a create your own style option as well that you can go and play around with. And then settings, you can see I've got the option to either turn on or off responses. And I have a message when the form is submitted as well. You can customize that as well. But you are very limited to settings. If you worked in Microsoft Forms, you know there are a ton of other options you might want to use, and they're just not available at the moment in this one. If I go to send form, you'll see that I can only send this to people in my organisation. So I can't send this externally at the moment. So that is a very key limitation. They must be signed into my organisation in order to answer this form and feed back that data. So I would just copy link and then I can share that in an email or an instant message or however else I want to interact with my people. If I go to the preview option, I can see a preview of what this form looks like. And I'm just going to complete this out so we can see the detail. And when I've completed it out, I'm just going to click on submit. And you can see there I've got the opportunity to submit another response. This will be really useful if you're using it for something different, like logging any issues or logging separate requests. So there is that functionality that is available. Clicking back on the form then, I can still see obviously my form is open. I went into preview. I'm just going to click on the cross to close that down. And you'll see that column has been added in right at the end there. When did you complete the training? So even though I added it as part of the form process, it still added it onto my list. And I'm going to just refresh to pull in that data. And there you can see that information that's been popped up. Now I have added the first column is the username column, and I typed that information in, but you may have noticed when we created that form, it said that it was going to capture that information. So actually you don't have to have a column like that. You can just turn that column on, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So that again is another limitation, because sometimes you want to capture data, but you want to make it anonymous. That's not something you can do at the moment with this functionality, but again, I can imagine that is coming. So to turn on collecting that data so you don't have to have the user typing that in, you're just going to go to add column, and then you're going to go to show or hide columns in the bottom left. And then you'll have a list of all the different options. And you want created and created by. And I'm going to click on apply. And you can see there, I can see when this was completed, and I can also see who completed it, because that information is captured when the form is completed. So we know exactly when it was created and we know who did it. So actually I don't need that cell right at the beginning. I don't need that column. I don't need to capture that data. So it's a nice bit of functionality you can turn on. And then remember, now you're in lists, you can change the view options. Once you populate a load more data, I can create some notifications and automation from this. So as soon as this pops in, I can send this out to someone else. I can task it to someone. I can do all sorts of great stuff within Microsoft Lists. So one to have a really good play around with. Now, just do remember that there is some limited functionality in there and it might not work exactly for what you want right now, but it's definitely worth having a look at. And it's one I'm going to explore a little bit more to see if it's going to work for me and what I'm doing now. And if not, I'll just keep my eye on it and see when it's going to pop out with some new bits of functionality. And then I maybe switch over from having my data in Excel to having it in Microsoft Lists, because there's some real benefits there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and please do let me know what videos you'd like me to record next.